Welcome back to Securing Digital Democracy. In today's lecture, I want to tell you about something I think is the absolute worst idea in voting. And that's the idea that we should cast our ballots over the internet. So if you think about the progression of voting technology, from voice voting through paper ballots, the secret ballot, the lever machines, punch cards, optical scan, DREs, what's next? What's the next thing that's going to come down the pipe? When DREs were introduced over the past 2 decades, they were seen as the technological savior for all of our voting problems. They were seen as the sensible use of new technology. But that was before the internet became part of all of our everyday lives. You're watching me right now over the internet. So internet voting might seem like the logical next step. It's the latest technology. It would be more convenient. We already bank online. Why can't we vote online? Isn't this just the natural progression of technology? Well, it turns out that there's some things that technology just doesn't do very well. And there's some things that are beyond the limitations of what we know how to do well with the technology we have today. And over the course of this lecture, I'm going to show you some of the problems, some of the reasons why voting online is the worst idea in voting. Some countries already practice internet voting in limited forms, but one country, Estonia, actually counts a substantial fraction of its ballots over the internet today. Here you can see the growth since 2005 in internet voting in Estonia. In the last election in 2011, there were more than 140,000 votes counted over the internet. This is about 24% of participating voters. Estonia uses a system that's based on the national ID cards that are issued to all citizens that have a chip in them that allows them to do some cryptography. This is what they consider to be the basis for the security of their e-voting system. Now, some other countries have also been, we might say, dabbling in internet voting, including Canada, France, Switzerland, the United Kingdom, and the United States. But they're not nearly at the level of penetration that we see in Estonia. When 25% or so of all your votes are counted online, suddenly internet voting becomes a really, really attractive target for people who want to commit fraud. And my concern is that in other countries that are today experimenting with it or conducting pilots, it might someday soon, if voters like it, become as popular or more than internet voting in Estonia today. In the US, there have been a series of pilot projects. The most recent were 3 jurisdictions in 2010 that introduced internet voting systems that were targeted at overseas absentee voters, people living abroad or members of the armed forces stationed abroad. And these were West Virginia, Arizona, and Washington, D.C. Now, 2 of these systems counted actual votes in the election. The one in Washington, D.C. was intended to. But because of a series of events that I happen to be involved in that I'll tell you about in the last segment of this lecture, Washington ended up not using its system to count votes over the internet in the real election. So let's think a little bit about the security risks of internet voting. And I'm going to walk you through this over the next couple of segments. And I want to ask some more focused questions. But first, let's think about the kinds of attackers, the threats, the differently motivated attackers, for instance, who might want to target an internet voting system. What are some of the kinds of attackers who would want to target internet voting? So one of the reasons internet voting is such a concern is that it incorporates many of the same threats, many of the same potential attackers as DRE voting, and also some of the same threats and potential attackers of vote by mail. And together with those 2 classes, we also have to worry about all of the kinds of online computer threats that face us as we're normal users just interacting with other kinds of sites on the internet. So some of the kinds of attackers we have to be concerned about with internet voting include, first of all, the traditional fraudsters who we've been talking about up to this point. People who might be election insiders, they might be people who want to give a certain political candidate or party the advantage. The traditional vote fraudsters are equally well going to be able to target internet voting systems. On top of this, we have the online risks. There are many kinds of online criminals already who might have things to gain from attacking an internet voting system. In addition to these two classes, we have to worry about the rise of a new phenomenon on the internet, which is the idea of hacktivism. There are online groups, one of them is known as Anonymous, who engage in cyber attack in order to make political points. Maybe bringing down a major website because the company that runs it did something they perceive as wrong. Online voting would be a ripe target for this kind of online activism and protest, and for that reason I think this is one of the most important potential categories of threats. Finally, unlike voting in a small polling place in a physical location, an online voting system is, by virtue of being connected to the internet, accessible from anywhere in the world. Suddenly, it's potentially a target for attackers from foreign jurisdictions and other countries. Over the recent past, we've seen a rise in other areas of online attacks. We've seen a rise in attacks that are sponsored by foreign governments. Internet voting, if it became widely used enough to strongly change the outcome of elections, would be an especially attractive target for any foreign state or foreign intelligence organization that wanted to interfere in domestic politics. So all of these categories of threats are worries. I'm going to go into some of the technical risks over the course of the next two sections. But as I do, keep in mind these different classes of adversaries who might be trying to commit the crime.